I was worried if my mom talked about leaving money because they don't have a big house. Surprise. I didn't think she'd give Monica a gift before leaving. Maybe mom wanted to show love to Monica her own way. While talking with my husband Arthur, I opened a gift from my mother-in-law meant for our daughter. I wondered what it could be. When I saw what was inside, I got really mad and threw it away. Arthur, changing nearby, was shocked to find it in the trash. Mary, what are you doing? Mom got a gift for Monica. Arthur scolded, unaware. Did you see what's inside? You'd want to throw it away too, I exclaimed. Arthur looked puzzled, then retrieved the bag from the trash to see for himself. You must be joking. My name's Mary, and I'm a 30-year-old stay-at-home mom. Arthur and I have been married for 3 years. I used to work, but after our daughter Monica was born last year, I quit my job. We both love our daughter dearly, and being a family of 3 brings us so much happiness. I wish this warm time could last forever. But things have changed. One concern I have is my relationship with my mother-in-law. At first, she seemed really kind. She accepted our marriage easily when we told her about it. Even though we didn't visit her often, whenever we did, she treated me well, and I thought we had a good relationship. Things started to shift about a year after we got married. Sadly, my father-in-law passed away from an illness. My mother-in-law was deeply saddened because she loved him very much. She was very low, and Arthur didn't seem to know how to comfort her. As she slowly started to feel better, which relieved both Arthur and me, she began treating me harshly. It seemed like after losing her husband, she realized her only source of affection was her son. She started being cold towards me, perhaps feeling jealous that I had taken her son away from her. She also took pride in the family property and lineage passed down from her late father-in-law. Once she directly told me, "Don't assume you'll inherit this house easily." Even though the property was valuable, it originally belonged to her husband's family, so logically it would pass down to Arthur, not me. But after becoming distant, my mother-in-law began treating me like a nuisance and started tormenting me. "Mary, when will you have a baby? It's your responsibility to give birth to an heir. If you can't do that, you'll have to leave Arthur." This became her attitude towards me. Every time we met, she pressured me about having a baby. I gave birth to a child last year, which was a surprise considering the stress I was under. However, my mother-in-law wasn't satisfied that our child was a daughter. She simply said, "Well then, next year," as if it were expected. Having children in consecutive years is difficult. Also, Arthur and I hadn't even discussed having a second child yet. When I mentioned this, my mother-in-law insisted, "What are you talking about? Your duty is to give birth to a male heir, no matter how many children it takes." She keeps repeating the same things so much that it's shocking. It's like she's stuck on a loop, saying the exact same phrases over and over again. Sometimes I wonder if she's like an AI robot programmed to only say those things. In today's world, her obsession with having a male heir is incredibly outdated and absurd. I wish she would let go of these old-fashioned ideas and appreciate her granddaughter, Monica, who is here now. Every time I see her, it just disgusts me more. But when she's around my husband, her son, she puts on a different face. She acts like she's understanding and kind towards me. The contrast between how she acts when it's just the two of us and when my husband is there is so stark. It's like she's 2 different people. I almost want to take pictures and compare them. No matter how well she hides it from my husband, her awful treatment of me, her daughter-in-law, raises serious doubts about her as a person. Doesn't she think about the possibility of me telling my husband about how she really behaves? Or does she believe she can keep fooling him forever? Throughout my pregnancy, she relentlessly harassed me, causing a lot of distress. Whenever my husband wasn't around, she would approach me and say things like, "You understand, right? If it's not a boy, I won't forgive you. If it's a girl, you should consider abortion." Hearing those words made me seriously question her humanity. When I objected, saying it was going too far, she responded, "A girl will just get married and leave. It would be a waste of money and time." I remember thinking to myself, this woman is beyond hope. For me, the gender of the baby didn't matter. All I wanted was a healthy child whom I could love unconditionally. My mother-in-law's words caused me a lot of stress. Each time she made these hurtful comments, I would respond vaguely, just trying to endure until the baby was born. When my mother-in-law found out the baby was a girl, her reaction was as awful as I had anticipated. It was then that her true, unpleasant nature, usually hidden from my husband, became evident. "Why did you have a girl? I've told you countless times to have a boy." That was the first thing my mother-in-law said when she visited the hospital and saw her granddaughter. My husband, completely unaware, seemed bewildered by her comment. My mother-in-law often visited our apartment when my husband wasn't around. She used to say, "I'm here to educate you as my daughter-in-law," but it felt more like she came to torment me under the guise of giving advice. Her so-called guidance was filled with sarcastic remarks. She'd say things like, "You really can't cook, can you? Aren't you embarrassed to make such awful food? Poor Arthur, maybe that's why you couldn't have a boy." These criticisms were baseless, but she always found ways to blame my homemaking skills for not giving birth to a son. She criticizes everything, even linking it to the idea of having a boy. My mother-in-law is always finding fault. I feel like everything I do is wrong and she insists I redo it. Her frequent visits with this attitude were really draining. Each time I have to deal with her, I find myself disliking her more and more. I have my own way of doing things around the house, and I'm tired of constantly hearing about having a boy. I wonder if I should have stood up for myself more. But deep down, I sympathize with my mother-in-law, who is grieving the loss of my father-in-law. I held on to a faint hope that she might return to the kind person she used to be. Maybe my optimism made me overlook her behavior. One day, as usual, she came over, complaining about various things, and then started her usual mantra: we should have a boy. She even mentioned a name she had in mind, Thomas. It was getting harder to tolerate her. As these days went by, my daughter's second birthday was approaching. I was busy preparing to make her day special, but then my mother-in-law showed up, as if on cue when my husband was at work. Even on a day meant for celebrating my daughter's birthday, I didn't want her there. Actually, I never do. I paused the birthday preparations, brewed some tea, and entertained her in the living room. Why is she still a girl? My mother-in-law remarked, looking at my daughter. Please stop, I pleaded. Today is my daughter's birthday. I just wish she would leave already. Lately, she hasn't been as critical about household chores. I've started to figure out what might please her, but her comments about having a boy and continuing the family line haven't stopped. Are you pregnant yet? There won't be a small age gap anymore, so you should hurry up and have a boy. I've said it many times, but my husband and I aren't desperate to have a child. No one knows what the future holds with having children. We were fortunate to have a daughter shortly after getting married, but there are couples who struggle for years without success. Children don't come just because you want them to. It should be obvious with a little thought. I must have been under a lot of stress. This was the first time I firmly and clearly expressed this to my mother-in-law. When I did, she glared at me angrily. What kind of daughter-in-law am I dealing with here? It's because of your attitude that you haven't had a boy. You're influencing Arthur too, aren't you? Of course you are. Otherwise, Arthur would want a boy just like me. I was stunned. Arguing with my mother-in-law seemed pointless. I've told you many times you're useless until you have a boy. I couldn't let her continue to disrespect me like this anymore. Enough is enough. My husband has never spoken to me like that. We've built a happy family with our daughter. It's you who's disrupting that. If you plan to tear apart my family, don't come back to this house. I finally said it all, releasing my pent-up frustrations. My mother-in-law listened, her fists clenched and hands shaking as if she wanted to retort. But just then, Arthur arrived home. Immediately, her demeanor changed. Arthur, welcome home, she greeted him warmly. I was disgusted by her sudden shift. Mom, I didn't know you were here, Arthur said. Yes, but I'm leaving now, she replied curtly. No, wait, I forgot, this is for Monica's birthday, she added, handing me a paper bag. Huh, was all she said before leaving with a smile. Arthur and I were left bewildered. Was Mom all right? He asked. We were on the verge of a fight, but then you came back. I've been venting about my mother-in-law to Arthur for a while now. At his request, I recorded and played back our conversations. His reaction was, "This is terrible." Later he said to me, "If Mom does something outrageous again, let me know." He's been supportive of me, and that brings us to today. I recorded my interaction with my mother-in-law today and played it for Arthur. Well, you two really had a disagreement. You might be in trouble if she brings up inheritance issues, especially since they don't even have a big house. But I didn't expect her to give Monica a birthday gift when she left. Maybe Mom is trying to show affection for Monica in her own way. While chatting with Arthur, I opened the present from my mother-in-law meant for our daughter. I was curious to see what she had given us. With a little excitement, I checked the contents of the gift, but I was instantly filled with anger when I saw what was inside the box. What on earth is this? I exclaimed in frustration and threw the gift into the trash. Arthur, who was changing clothes in the room, was surprised to see the gift in the trash. Mary, what are you doing? Mom went out of her way to buy a gift for Monica. That's too much, he scolded me, unaware of what had happened. I knew Arthur would understand once I explained. Did you see what's inside? You'd want to throw away this kind of gift too. It's unbelievable, I told him, frustrated. Arthur looked puzzled, then retrieved the paper bag from the trash and looked inside. You're kidding, right? He said in disbelief. The gift from my mother-in-law was beyond belief. One item was a stack of adoption papers, suggesting she wanted us to give up our daughter. The other was a virility drug, seemingly pushing us to try harder to have a boy. Even Arthur was shaken by her audacious actions. This is too much, he muttered quietly, pocketing the car keys and heading for the door. I followed Arthur, holding our daughter tightly. We drove straight to his parents' house, seething with anger. Neither of us spoke during the drive, but we shared the same intense emotions. Soon we arrived at his parents' house. Arthur opened the door without bothering to ring the bell and walked in. I followed him inside. In the living room, my mother-in-law was casually sipping tea. "Oh, you're here. Weren't you celebrating Monica's birthday?" Her nonchalant demeanor implied that the gift she gave was no big deal. In a tense voice, my husband asked, "Mom, what's the meaning of this gift you sent?" His voice was clearly filled with anger. Unfazed or perhaps unaware, my mother-in-law chuckled smugly. "I thought it was time to seriously consider having a son. You said you weren't planning for a second child, right? If you give up your first child for adoption, you'll have a reason to try again." "That's absurd. Suggesting we give up our precious daughter for adoption just to have a male heir. You should understand your responsibility as the only son of this family." It seemed my mother-in-law had run out of patience, revealing her true beliefs even to her son. Gently yet firmly, my husband responded, "I see. So that's how you think, Mom?" "Yes, exactly. You need to have a son to continue the family line." "Enough of that. I love Monica and I love Mary. Isn't it more important to have a family bonded by love rather than just lineage? I've always valued you as a parent who shares our blood. Please take care of Monica as well." Even considering giving her up for adoption is completely out of line, my husband said firmly to his mother, his anger tempered with gentleness. But it seemed his kindness went unnoticed by my mother-in-law. "Ah, I see. You don't understand me as well as I thought you did," she responded. "There's no point in having a girl. Eventually she'll marry into another family. It's your duty to continue our respected family line," she continued, unmoved by his words. My husband relaxed his fists. "It seems my words won't reach you anymore. If this house and lineage mean so much to you, then why don't you take care of them all by yourself? I won't stand in your way." My mother-in-law tilted her head in confusion. "What are you talking about? You're the only son of this family. Naturally, you will inherit this house and land and become the head of the family." My husband smiled slightly and said to her, "No, I refuse. I'm cutting ties with you and becoming part of Mary's family." "What?" My mother-in-law was taken aback by my husband's unexpected declaration of adoption. That's unacceptable. You have to inherit this house and have a son," she protested. "I'm tired of all of that. I can't forgive you anymore. You've crossed a line. You've gone too far," he replied firmly. "Reflect on your actions alone." "Arthur, wait." My mother-in-law bowed her head and tried to cling to my husband's leg. He gently shook off her hand, and we left her house together. Later, we explained everything to my parents, and my husband officially became an adopted son of my family. From that point on, my mother-in-law was no longer a part of our lives. According to what my husband heard through a relative, my mother-in-law was bedridden due to the shock of being abandoned by her only son. Despite this, I feel no pity or sympathy for her. She brought so much turmoil into our lives with her selfish actions. Afterward, my husband, our daughter, and I moved into a newly purchased home. Part of the reason was to avoid any further intrusion from my mother-in-law, but also because it felt like the right time for us to have our own place. Now the three of us live happily together in our beautiful new home. I'm grateful that my husband prioritized our family. Whatever challenges the future may bring, I know we'll face them together and continue to